Jasmine Crockett thought she had Karoline Leavitt backed into a corner until she calmly uttered a sentence that silenced the entire hearing room. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. The hearing room was packed, not a single seat left. Cameras blazed, microphones poised, the air heavy like the calm before a storm. Karoline Leavitt, White House press secretary, sat at the witness table, her demeanor cool and composed to the point of frostiness. A simple black blazer hugged her frame, her sharp eyes staring straight ahead. She brought no entourage, just herself, a glass of water, and an unassuming confidence. Across the room, the door swung open, and Jasmine Crockett, Texas congresswoman, stormed in like a whirlwind. Her red blouse blazed, her gaze cold and cutting as a knife. She didn't even glance at Leavitt. The cameras were already on her, and she knew it. The House Oversight Committee chairman banged his gavel, the sound echoing. The hearing on White House media accountability begins. His voice was firm, but no one paid attention. Every eye was on the two women. Leavitt, Trump's spokesperson, here to defend the administration. Crockett, the Democratic firebrand, ready to tear apart any excuse. The chairman banged his gavel again, the sharp sound slicing through the murmurs in the room. "We're here to examine the White House's responsibility in managing public information," he said, his tone low, but unable to drown out the rising tension. The cameras panned slowly across the audience, settling on Karoline Leavitt. The lights highlighted her face, accentuating her icy calm, as if she'd faced this pressure 100 times before. Opposite her, Jasmine Crockett leaned forward, tapping her pen rapidly on a stack of papers, her eyes sharp enough to pierce Leavitt on the spot. The chairman turned to Leavitt. "Miss Leavitt, you have 5 minutes for your opening statement." The microphone hissed faintly as she pulled it closer, but her voice rang out clear and unwavering. "Thank you, Chairman and members of the House Oversight Committee," she began, her tone steady and confident. "I'm not here to apologize or make excuses. President Trump's administration believes in one simple thing. The American people have the right to speak, and it's not our job to silence them on X or anywhere else. We let them express themselves freely, whether you agree with it or not, Congresswoman Crockett." She cast a quick glance at Crockett, a flicker of challenge in her eyes, but not enough to crack her composure. The room fell dead silent. Leavitt continued, her voice neither loud nor fluid, but sharp as a blade. "The White House doesn't control the narrative. We don't need to. The people decide what they believe, hear, and say. If someone thinks that's chaos, so be it, but we call it real democracy. Not something filtered through the hands of politicians or media who think they get to judge." She paused, took a sip of water, and set the glass down gently. "I know I'll be grilled today. I'm ready. But don't expect me to apologize for letting Americans be free." She finished, pushed the microphone away, and sat back, hands still clasped. Scattered applause broke out from a few corners, clearly Trump supporters, but it was quickly drowned by murmurs. The cameras swung to Crockett. She didn't clap. She didn't smile. Her lips were pressed tight, her fingers stopped tapping the pen, and instead gripped it like she wanted to snap it. An aide whispered something beside her, but she waved them off, eyes locked on Leavitt. Clearly, she wasn't letting that opening slide easily. The chairman nodded, his voice dry. "Thank you, Miss Leavitt. We'll move to questioning. Congresswoman Crockett, would you like to start?" Crockett didn't wait for him to finish. She stood, pulling the microphone close, her voice booming like a gunshot. "Oh, I'd love to, Mr. Chairman." A few chuckles rose from some Democratic lawmakers, but the air quickly grew heavy again. She pointed at Leavitt, no hesitation. "You just gave a nice speech about real democracy, but I want to ask, does real democracy mean letting lies spread rampant on X, tearing this country apart? Or is that just an excuse for the White House to dodge accountability?" Leavitt didn't flinch. She met Crockett's gaze, eyes steady. "Congresswoman Crockett, I don't think you want the real answer," she replied, her voice light but cutting. "But I'll give it. We don't control X, and we don't control the people. You want to call it lies, that's your call. We call it truth. Truth not everyone wants to hear." A faint smile flickered on her lips, barely there, but enough to set Crockett off. Crockett leaned closer to the mic, her voice rising. "Truth? You call election conspiracies divisive rhetoric truth? You stand there, representing the White House, and say letting people get brainwashed is democracy? I can't believe this." She turned to the audience, hand raised as if rallying support. "This isn't democracy. This is chaos your administration created. The room buzzed. Murmurs grew louder, some nodding, others shaking their heads. Leavitt responded, her tone still even. If you think the people aren't smart enough to tell truth from lies, the problem's not with us, Congresswoman Crockett. Maybe you should ask yourself, who's really trying to dictate what people should think? We let them think freely. You want the White House to filter every word to fit your view? Is that freedom in your eyes? The words were like fuel on a fire. Crockett slammed her hand on the table, the bang echoing. Don't play innocent with me, she shouted, eyes blazing. The chairman's gavel pounded repeatedly, but no one cared. Jasmine Crockett stood there, hands on hips, eyes burning like she wanted to incinerate Karoline Leavitt on the spot. Leavitt sat still, her face unmoved, as if Crockett's fury was just a passing breeze. The hearing room crackled, the air thick with the clash between the two women. One a raging fire, the other an unmelting block of ice. Crockett took a deep breath, her voice trembling with anger, but still sharp. Miss Leavitt, I want to clarify one thing before we go further. You were a lawyer in Texas, fighting for people hurt by lies, like I saw in Dallas, where conspiracies tore communities apart. I'm here for them. And you're the youngest press secretary, loyal to Trump, just had a kid, yet you're standing here, defending this so-called people's voice. I don't get it. Do you actually believe what you're saying, or are you just reading Trump's script? Leavitt tilted her head slightly, a hint of curiosity in her eyes, but never breaking from Crockett. Congresswoman Crockett, I'm not here to tell my life story, she replied, her voice steady and cool. But if you must know, yes, I believe what I say. I'm not reading a script. I speak because this administration believes Americans don't need someone holding their hand through every word on X. Crockett let out a scoff, the sound reverberating through the mic. Believe it? Then let me ask you straight. Do you know what the White House leaves on X? Posts about election fraud, anti-immigrant rants. You call that the people's voices? That's lies. Chaos. The stuff tearing this country apart. And you, Miss Leavitt, stand there with that bland smile, acting like you're blameless? Leavitt didn't smile. She paused, adjusted the mic, then replied. Congresswoman Crockett, you can call it whatever you want, but we don't write those posts, the people do. If you don't like the content, the issue isn't us. It's the very people you represent. What they think, what they say, that's not something the White House can or should control. Her voice was calm, but each word stabbed at Crockett's argument. Crockett slammed her hand down again, startling a few onlookers. Don't dodge me, she yelled, pointing straight at Leavitt. You know what those lies cause? People believe the election was stolen, people threaten violence, and you just sit there saying that's democracy? I'm not buying that excuse. You're Trump's puppet, letting him and his cronies weaponize X. The room erupted. Murmurs spread across the gallery. Some Democratic lawmakers nodding, Republicans shaking their heads. Leavitt didn't budge, her gaze locked on Crockett. Puppet? She repeated, a trace of mockery in her tone but still restrained. Congresswoman Crockett, I don't run X, and neither does the White House. If you think the people are a weapon just because they say things you don't like, maybe you're the one who doesn't trust them. Who do you want to silence, Trump or your own voters? Crockett leaned into the mic, her voice shrill, almost a shout. Don't act noble with me. I'm not silencing anyone. I want you and the White House held accountable. Those posts aren't voices. They're hate, violence, the stuff turning people against each other. You think you're clever, sitting there playing innocent, but I see through it. You're enabling chaos. Leavitt raised an eyebrow, the first hint of a reaction, but quickly regained her calm. Hate or not, Congresswoman Crockett, I don't decide that, and neither do you, she said, her voice ringing slightly. You want the White House to censor every post on X? Fine, but don't be surprised when the people turn on you. They don't like being treated like kids who need babysitting. Crockett fired back instantly, hand raised as if to drown Leavitt in her fury. I'm not babysitting anyone. I'm protecting them from the lies you let spread. Do you know the consequences? People believe conspiracies, act on them, and you just shrug, saying that's freedom? Freedom to destroy the country. Her voice broke, emotions spilling out uncontrollably. Leavitt stared straight at Crockett, unblinking. Freedom's always messy, she replied, her voice low but sharp. But what do you want? A world where the government filters every word to protect people? That's not freedom, Congresswoman Crockett. That's control. Something you seem to enjoy. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. The room filled with noise. A few woos rose from the stands, reporters scribbling furiously. Crockett gripped the mic like she wanted to crush it. Control, she repeated, her voice shaking with rage. You dare say I want control? I want truth. I want accountability. And you're just Trump's mouthpiece, letting him and his MAGA crowd sow chaos unchecked. The chairman banged his gavel again. Order. Order. But his voice drowned in Crockett's emotional storm. Leavitt didn't reply immediately. She took another sip of water, set the glass down, and looked at Crockett with eyes both curious and steely. If you want accountability, go ahead and ask, she said, her tone still even. But don't expect me to apologize for letting the people speak, no matter how loud you yell. Crockett slammed her hand so hard the stack of papers trembled. I'll scream until you take responsibility, she roared, her face flushed red. Out there, social media was ablaze. Live viewers typed furiously. Hashtag Crockett versus Leavitt climbing higher than ever. The sound of Jasmine Crockett's hand hitting the table still echoed in the hearing room. But Karoline Leavitt didn't flinch. She sat there, hands lightly clasped on the table, her cold gaze locked on Crockett, as if the fury couldn't touch her. The House Oversight Committee chairman pounded his gavel repeatedly. Order. I demand order. But his voice was a mere whisper in the storm. Crockett's eyes were bloodshot, her grip on the microphone so tight her knuckles turned white. She took a deep breath, her voice trembling with rage but still sharp as a blade. Miss Leavitt, I'll ask one last time. Are you going to take responsibility for the lies on X? Or will you keep pretending you're just a bystander? Leavitt didn't answer right away. She tilted her head slightly, as if considering, then pulled the microphone closer. Her voice rang out, steady, emotionless. Congresswoman Crockett, I'm not responsible for what the people say. I'm responsible for ensuring they can say it. You want to blame someone? Blame freedom. But don't expect me to stand here apologizing for not silencing them. She paused, leaning slightly forward, her eyes never leaving Crockett. Crockett fired back instantly, her voice piercingly high as if it could punch through the room's walls. Freedom? You call that freedom? When people believe the election was stolen. When they threaten to kill each other over posts on X that you let slide. That's not freedom, it's chaos, and you're enabling it. She pointed straight at Leavitt, her finger trembling with anger. You stand there, representing the White House, and say it's fine to let people be misled? I can't accept that. The room erupted in murmurs. The audience leaned forward. Reporters scribbled frantically. A few Democratic lawmakers nodded in. Approval Lade didn't blink. She looked at Cocky T, her gaze sharp but devoid of hostility. Congresswoman Crockett, she said, her voice lower, firmer. You keep talking about people being misled, but who's really trying to impose their thoughts on others? We let people think for themselves. You want the White House to censor every word to fit your narrative. Is that freedom in your eyes? Crockett was livid. Don't twist my words, she screamed, her face burning red. I don't want censorship. I want you to be accountable. Those lies have consequences. People die, communities fall apart, and you just shrug and say, that's democracy? You think you're so clever, but I see it. You're hiding behind freedom to protect Trump. Lade pulled the microphone closer, her voice still even but sharp as a knife. Congresswoman Crockett, I'm not hiding behind anything. I'm standing here in front of you, in front of this nation. But if you want to talk about consequences, look at yourself. You want to control the narrative, decide who gets to speak and who doesn't. That's not protection, that's power. And maybe your problem isn't the lies, but that you can't control the story anymore. The words were like a slow-burning bomb. The room fell silent, only Crockett's ragged breathing audible through the mic. Her eyes widened, her face froze for a moment, then exploded. Control? She roared, her voice breaking, her hand pointing at Lade as if she might charge. You dare say I want control? You're gaslighting this entire Congress. I'm fighting for truth, for the people. And you let Trump and his MAGA crowd sow chaos, then stand there pretending to be noble? Who are you to say I've lost control? Lade looked at Crockett, a flicker of curiosity in her eyes, then leaned into the mic. I didn't say you've lost control, Congresswoman Crockett, she said, her voice low but clear. I said you don't control the narrative anymore. And that scares you. You yell, you bang the table, but the people still speak. And we still let them. You want to change that? Go ahead and try. She paused, letting the words hang, then sat back, hands lightly clasped as if nothing had happened. That was the final straw. Crockett lost it completely. She shot up, her chair scraping back with a screech, her hand slamming the table again. Try. I won't just try. I'll make you pay, she screamed, her voice shaking with uncontrollable rage. "You think you're so smart, sitting there with that cool act? But I won't let you dodge this. The people deserve the truth, not lies from Trump's mouthpiece." The microphone trembled with every word. Her face flushed, her eyes wild, as if she might leap across the witness table. The murmurs in the room turned into a roar, the audience whispering, some shouting in agreement. Democratic lawmakers clapped sporadically, while Republicans shook their heads, a few smirking. The chairman pounded his gavel relentlessly. "Order now!" But no one listened. Leavitt sat still, not smiling, not moving, just watching Crockett with an eerie calm. Leavitt's voice was low but clear. "You want the truth? The truth is, the people are still speaking. And you can't stop them." The words were a final dagger. Crockett screamed, "You're manipulating all of us." But her voice drowned in the chairman's gavel and the noise from the stands. The chairman pounded his gavel relentlessly. "I demand order immediately." But his voice was swallowed by the storm of reactions. The hearing room turned into a sea of noise, no longer murmurs but chaotic clamor. The audience leaned forward, some standing, reporters scribbling madly, cameras whipping between the two women to catch every second. Crockett looked like she wanted to lunge across the witness table at Leavitt. But she didn't move, just stood there, staring at her opponent with uncontainable fury. An aide whispered something, touching her shoulder, but Crockett brushed them off, her eyes never leaving Leavitt. She had just lost control in front of the nation. And everyone saw it. Leavitt, in contrast, said nothing more, her hands clasped tightly as if nothing had occurred. Her gaze flicked to Crockett. Not a challenge, but an observation. Calm. Cold. Almost detached. That terrifying composure. A perfect counterpoint to Crockett's emotional storm. Inside the room, reactions split sharply. A cluster of Democratic lawmakers clapped sporadically, some nodding in support of Crockett, whispering to each other. She's right. There has to be accountability. But the Republicans saw it differently. A few smirked. Others nodded, as if Leavitt had just scored a major point. One lawmaker muttered to a colleague. She didn't even flinch. Impressive. The gallery was chaos, clapping mixed with whistles, some shouting. Crockett speaking truth. While others yelled, "Leavitt won!" The chairman banged his gavel again, his face red with frustration. But no one cared. On X, reactions split starkly. One user posted, "Leavitt just knocked out Crockett without raising her voice. She's a legend." The post racked up thousands of likes, paired with a meme of Leavitt sitting calmly, captioned, "When you win without trying." Trump supporters hailed her as a new icon. "Steel. Ice. Nothing breaks her. This is the spokesperson we need." Another wrote, "The louder Crockett yells, the more she proves Leavitt right. People don't want to be gagged." Private MAGA chat groups overflowed with praise, calling Leavitt Trump's secret weapon. But Crockett's supporters didn't back down. One user wrote, "Crockett's fighting for truth. Leavitt is just a mouthpiece for Trump's lies. Don't let them win." The post drew thousands in agreement, paired with a clip of Crockett pointing at Leavitt, captioned, "She's speaking for us." Progressive X groups rallied. Crockett exploded because she cares. Leavitt's cold because she's got nothing to lose. Another hit back at Leavitt. Calm doesn't mean right. She's just dodging responsibility. A keyboard war erupted, each side splicing clips to their liking, pushing the divide to a fever pitch. Beyond X, other platforms joined in. On Instagram, a famous influencer's story posted Leavitt's photo with peak confidence. Cool but blazing. Meanwhile, another account uploaded a clip of Crockett slamming the table, writing, "When you're fed up with lies, she's the queen." TikTok exploded with reenactments. One user played Leavitt, sitting still with a flat, "You can't control it," facing another as Crockett, yelling and banging a table. The short hit 1 million views in the first hour, with comments. "Crockett's fierce. Leavitt's the boss." Social media turned the showdown into a cultural phenomenon. No longer just politics, but a personal duel. Everyone picked a side. Mainstream media didn't sit out. CNN aired it live, a commentator analyzing. Crockett showed rare courage. She's not afraid to confront power. But Leavitt, with that calm, turned Crockett's anger into a disadvantage. Fox News countered. Leavitt just taught Congress a lesson in control. Crockett yelled, but Leavitt won with smarts. An MSNBC pundit said, "Crockett embodies the people's outrage. Leavitt, just Trump's megaphone." Meanwhile, Newsmax praised, "She's the future of the GOP. Cool, sharp, unflinching." Smaller outlets piled on. A Twitch streamer shouted mid-broadcast, "This is the fight of the century, fire versus ice. And I'm betting on ice." A popular podcaster dropped an emergency episode. Leavitt didn't just win. She redefined what a spokesperson can be. Crockett's hot, but she couldn't take her down. Local papers chimed in. A Texas one wrote, "Crockett's fighting for our voters," while a New Hampshire sheet called Lit a rising star. The clash spread across every media corner, from TV to radio, no one missing a chance to dissect it. Karoline Leavitt stepped into the hallway, her heels clicking steadily on the marble floor. Reporters rushed forward, microphones raised, but she glided past, her sharp gaze never lingering. She turned into a small third-floor office, where Elise Stefanik, the newly appointed UN ambassador and close Trump ally, waited. The door shut, locking out the noise. Stefanik rose from her chair, coffee in hand, a smirk on her lips. "You did great, Karoline," she said, her voice low but warm. Crockett screamed loud, but you didn't flinch. Leavitt sank into an armchair for the first time that day, letting her shoulders relax. She unbuttoned her blazer, exhaling softly. "I wasn't surprised by her," she replied, her voice low. "Crockett cares. I can see that. But she thinks yelling will change something. It doesn't work that way." Stefanik nodded, setting her coffee down. "You just showed the nation how we play, calm, sharp. Trump's going to love this." Leavitt gazed out the window, the city lights twinkling below. She stayed silent for a moment, her fingers tapping lightly on the armrest. "I didn't do it for Trump," she said, her voice tinged with a hint of reflection. "I did it for principle. People have to be able to speak, right or wrong. Otherwise, we're no different from the ones Crockett hates." Stefanik raised an eyebrow, but didn't argue. She stepped closer, patting Leavitt's shoulder lightly. "You're the youngest press secretary in history, and today you proved why. Take a break, Karoline. You've earned it." Leavitt nodded, but her eyes remained fixed on the view outside. She wondered, am I doing the right thing? Still, she brushed it off quickly. She believed in what she stood for, not Trump, not the White House, but the idea that truth would find its way, no matter how messy it got. A few rooms away, Jasmine Crockett stormed into her office, the door slamming shut behind her. She dropped her stack of papers on the desk, hands trembling, then collapsed into her chair. Her team, 3 young aides, stood around, none daring to speak. Finally, one broke the silence, voice hesitant. "You okay, Congresswoman Crockett? You did great. The whole country heard you." Crockett looked up, eyes still red, breathing heavily. "Great," she repeated, her voice hoarse. "I didn't take her down. I yelled. I banged the table. But Leavitt?" She didn't budge. "I don't feel like I won." Another aide, a short-haired girl, stepped forward, placing a hand on the desk. "You spoke the truth. That's what matters. Leavitt can be calm, but you showed we won't stay silent against lies." Crockett gave a faint, bitter laugh, shaking her head. "Truth doesn't mean a thing if I can't make them accountable." She stood there, cold as ice, and made me look like the one who lost control. "I hate that." She tapped her fist lightly on the desk, no strength left for a hard slam like before. She remembered her days as a lawyer in Texas, fighting for people hurt by misinformation, families broken by conspiracies, communities split by lies. That's why she got into politics. That's why she shouted today. She turned back to her team. "I'm not stopping," she said, her voice firmer. "Leavitt and Trump might have won today, but I'll make them pay. Somehow." Out there, the public remained divided. In Texas, Crockett's voters gathered outside her local office, holding signs. "Jasmine speaks for us," an older woman told a reporter. "She's fiery, but she cares. Not like that cold crew at the White House." In New Hampshire, Litt's home state, locals crowded into a coffee shop, proudly rewatching the clip. A middle-aged man grinned. "She's our girl. Calm but cutting." Crockett didn't stand a chance. The story of the clash between Jasmine Crockett and Karoline Leavitt mirrors the deep divide in American society today. A nation where free speech, social media, and politics collide in unrelenting battles. In the story, Crockett represents the outraged voice of those who feel truth is being warped by misinformation, like when she screamed about the consequences of lies tearing communities apart. In contrast, Leavitt, with her icy calm, defends the stance that people must be free to speak, even if it leads to chaos, like her line, "You don't control the narrative anymore," that set Crockett off. This clash echoes real debates on X and public forums across America, where conservative and progressive groups endlessly spar over power and truth. The lesson here isn't just to stay calm like Leavitt or fight like Crockett. It's to realize that in a polarized society, how we communicate matters more than ever. Leavitt won, not because she was right, but because she controlled her emotions, turning Crockett's anger into a weakness, like when she walked away coolly amid the chaos. In today's America, where people are quick to get swept up in online or real-life arguments, learn to listen before you shout. And stand firm in your beliefs, without letting emotions cloud your reason. Crockett wasn't wrong to care, but she lost her edge by not staying composed. So argue with passion, but don't let it become a fire that burns you down. If you don't want to miss more fire and ice battles like Crockett versus Lit, hit that subscribe button now. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video with more top-tier political drama.